Hello and welcome back to Too Many Books. My name is Sean, and today I'd like to talk to you about the Wishsong of Shannara, or Shannara, or however you want to pronounce it. There is no wrong way. But it is the third and final novel in the original Shannara trilogy, which started back with Sword of Shannara back in 1977, followed up with Elfstones of Shannara in 1982, and then finally Wishsong in 1985. But believe it or not, this was almost the second novel in that trilogy written. I'll talk more about that in just a second. With my book comparison videos, I have previously done ones for Sword and Elfstone, so be sure to check that out. Be sure to subscribe if you want to see more of these book comparison videos. But the ones I'm going to be showcasing here in this spoiler-free comparison and book review are going to be the trade editions, one being just a book club edition. I don't have a true first edition, but it does have the same artwork as the book club edition. The mass market paperback, which is a little bit easier to find Darrell K Sweet artwork within, especially with the page edges being as they are in this trade edition. And then last but not least, the numbered edition from Grim Oak Press, which is the fanciest edition out there, featuring the artwork of Marc Simonetti. But as I mentioned, I did do spoiler-free book comparisons and book reviews, or mostly spoiler-free. I feel like I avoided spoilers in those. And I'm going to keep it as spoiler-free as I can here for Wishsong as well. So as I mentioned, Wishsong was almost the second novel. So back in 1977, Terry Brooks published The Sword of Shannara. He finally got that in publication. Here is my book club edition, which is expertly guarded by Garfield for whoever the previous owner was. This one is, of course, signed by Terry Brooks on the cover page, and that's pretty much all we're going to get out of that because it's a little bit in rough shape. So as far as interiors go, we're going to look to the mass market one, which features the same great Darrell K Sweet artwork. But anyways, 1977 Sword of Shannara is published, and honestly, I'm not too impressed with it. It's basically just a rehash of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, all three novels kind of crammed into one fantasy realm. So it really wasn't until 1982 with the publishing of the Elfstones of Shannara where I think Brooks really started to come into his own. But Elfstones wasn't even what he was originally writing as the Sword of Shannara sequel. No, instead he wanted to write the story of a young girl who had the power of song that could bring magic into the world. And if that sounds familiar, well, that is exactly what you get with Bryn Ohmsford in the Wishsong. But he brought this story to Del Rey. Del Rey wasn't really impressed with it, told to go back to the drawing board, and so he did and wrote Elfstones. But wanting to have a sequel to that, he took another crack at that magical girl, and thus Wishsong of Shannara was brought into being. So, as I mentioned, the main characters here are actually Bryn and Jer Ohmsford, brother and sister, or sister and brother based on how I worded it there, who are the children of Will Ohmsford, the protagonist from Elfstones. And because of Will's meddling with those magical Elfstones, both Bryn and Jer have a magical ability called the Wishsong, where they can use magic and they can sing magic into being. Well, to differing degrees. Bryn is the more powerful of the two and can actually change reality through her use of the Wishsong, whereas Jer can only really create illusions through his song. But just like the previous novels before it, Sword and Elfstones, the real story begins here when good old Druid Alanon shows up in order to give another generation of Ohmsfords a quest. And I will say, if you watch my other two videos, I'm not a huge fan of Alanon as a character. He speaks primarily in plot summaries and in exposition. But I will say he is a better character here in Wishsong. In Sword and Elfstones, he's basically just there to give you the quest and then to explain important details. And then he just kind of does his own little thing. Within Wishsong, he actually goes on the journey with Bryn and with Roan Lee, descendant of Menyon Lee from the previous novel as well, to actually be a helping hand in the journey. So Wishsong, the quest that is given before them, is the idea that they need to destroy this book called the Ildatch. Ildach is a magical tomb that is infused with so much evil and dark magic that it has become sentient in its own right, and it has found its own apostles and disciples who are going to carry out its evil in the world. And so Al-Anon has reached out to the new Ohmsfords, to Bryn, and, well, leaving Jer behind, thinking that Jer's illusionary magic would not be helpful, sets off on a quest with Roan Lee and Bryn Ohmsford to try and seek out and destroy the Ildach. And along the way, they're going to encounter a great many interesting characters, among which is Cogline, who is a strange old man, and his adopted granddaughter Kimber, and their tamed big old cat Whisper, as shown here by Darrell K Sweet. But Bryn and Al-Anon are not the only ones having an adventure. Jer Ohmsford, who was left behind, soon finds that he has to go on his own journey to assist Bryn and help them overcome the evils and dangers that they face before them. And soon you're following both Bryn and Jer on their own journeys as they run into all sorts of interesting characters from point A to point B and try to fulfill their quest and destroy the Ildach once and for all. The writing style, if you are familiar with the previous two novels, is very much in the same, not really whimsical way, but the same magical way that Terry Brooks has. He has a great way of bringing non-fantasy readers into a fantasy world. Sword of Shannara, and I know I discussed this in that first video I had done, really brought Lord of the Rings to a more generalized audience, and that same tone does continue on to Wishsong here. So if you wanted to live more of the high fantasy that Tolkien had created, you can find that within the words of Terry Brooks. This edition here that I'm now moving on to is the Grim Oak edition. This was published almost a decade ago, several years ago. It features nice little bonded leather and stamping, and as I mentioned, it is going to feature artwork by Marc Simonetti within. It is, of course, signed by both Terry Brooks and Simonetti, limited to 1,000 copies. But yeah, Wishsong is a fun adventure. You know, there's a lot of danger in their quest. There's a lot of strange creatures and people you are going to meet along the way. It brings a whole level of kind of fantasy into it that strays a little off the path from Tolkien's fantasy, far enough from the path that it's not a straight-up ripoff like Sword of Shannara was, but it's still not 100% Terry Brooks' own voice. One of the big complaints I'm going to mention right now with the Grim Oak edition, as I'm showcasing this, here we have Slanter the Gnome with Jer Ohmsford, is that you can see the artwork is in black and white, and I know I mentioned this in the first two videos as well, but Marc Simonetti did do this artwork in color, and unfortunately, due to cost limitations in order to keep the prices down, Grim Oak then converted it to black and white, which is a damn shame, because Simonetti is a master of his craft. I mean, look at that dust jacket there, and I feel like you are losing a good depth of the image by converting it to black and white, which is a shame, because in the future volumes, starting, I can't remember if it starts with First King or if it starts after First King, they started to do actual full-color plates being inserted in, which really adds the most you can get with the artwork of Simonetti, or any artist, really. But yeah, no, I mean, if you've enjoyed the first two novels, you should definitely check out Wishsong. It's a great, you don't technically have to have read the first two novels. Each story is, in its own regard, a standalone fantasy adventure. Obviously, the characters here are descendants of the previous protagonists of the first and second novel. But you do get enough information within the story itself to not need to have that prior knowledge. You know, good old exposition machine Al-Anon is here to save the day and help you on your way. But I would highly recommend that if you wanted to get a starting point, start with Elfstones. I know people are going to say start with Sword because it's the first title. And yeah, I mean, technically you could read Sword first if you so desired. But honestly, if you've already read Lord of the Rings, or even if you've seen Lord of the Rings films, you already know what's going to happen within Sword of Shannara. It's really Elfstones where Terry Brooks starts to come into a world of his own, which is then carried and continued on within Wishsong. If you are a Shannara fan, definitely, give Wishsong a reread. Or if you're looking for nice, accessible fantasy, Terry Brooks is almost one of the most accessible out there that you can get. Almost to the disdain of like some fantasy purists I know. I know there's a lot of fantasy folks out there who aren't fans of Terry Brooks because of his style being not watered down per se, but almost simpler for, high fantasy. Now, there are plenty of editions out there that you can't own. This is just 3 of the ones here. If you wanted to go back to my Elfstones video, you'd also see an omnibus that includes all 3 titles of that original Shannara trilogy in one single volume. Now, the trade editions, particularly the mass-market paperback, should be available wherever books are sold. The Grim Oak edition is unfortunately sold out, so this does cost a pretty penny on the secondary market. But Grim Oak Press has announced that they are doing a nice little imprint called S Press, which is going to create trade hardcover editions with cloth boards, sewn spines, and the interior artwork of Darrell K Sweet or Brothers Hildebrandt in the case of Sword, all within one single package. It's limited to 1,000 copies, and I think it's mostly sold out right now. I think it's over 50% sold out. And you can get all 3 novels it's about $50 a novel, which, when you're looking at trade editions, is pretty pricey. I mean, this paperback by itself would be, under $10. So you're thinking, why would I want to spend more for that? But honestly, it's going to be one of the nicest hardcovers out there. It might not be as nice as the Grim Oak edition, but it's probably going to be the best edition without shilling out a ton for the Grim Oak edition. And like I said, it's almost sold out for what it is. I would like to say I'm doing an unboxing video for that trilogy when it's published, but I'm actually not. Scandalously, I'm not going to buy that, because if you didn't notice by the name of the channel, I have too many books. And as you can see from the various editions before you, I already have several editions of Wishsong. So adding one more, while it would be cool to showcase it for your viewing pleasure, I'm not going to do that, just because I need to focus on some other books for the time being. But anyways, link in the description below if you want to pick up a copy of the S Press edition of the original Shannara trilogy. They're not available individually. You do have to buy all 3, but I think it's well worth the money. Anyways, that, my friends, are my thoughts on Wishsong of Shannara, as well as a nice little book comparison of the editions that I own. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel here. I do at least one book review a week, plenty of unboxing videos in between there, and book comparison videos whenever I can. Have you read Wishsong of Shannara, or just Terry books in general? Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are on it. But anyways, thank you very much for watching. Check out Terry Brooks, check out S Press and Grim Oak Press, and we'll see you around next time.